Welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, where we highlight the latest trends in law office and legal practice management to help you run your firm. Brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center. You're listening to Legal Talk Network.
Hello and welcome to the Florida Bar Podcast, recorded from the 2019 Florida Bar Annual Convention in Boca Raton, Florida. This is Laurence Colletti. I'm the host for today's show. I'm substituting in for the illustrious and much more famous Christine Bilbrey and also her partner in crime, Carla Eckhart. So hopefully I do it justice. But joining me now, we have a surprise show. The boss was somewhere around and brought over a victims' rights attorney. This is an area of law that's new to me. So welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So your full name, just so everybody knows who you are, it's Stephanie Cagnet Myron. And before we talk about this area of law that you practice in, why don't you tell the listeners where you work, what do you do?
So I opened my own firm, Cagnet Myron Law, about 4 years ago now. I exclusively represent victims of stalking, cyberstalking, revenge porn, and sexual violence. And I represent them, I'm a one-stop shop for victims because I'm not only in family court handling the injunctions, restraining orders, I work with law enforcement, the state attorney's office. I represent the victim throughout the criminal process, and then I also handle the civil litigation issues that come up.
We've covered revenge porn issues on our network before, and I got to say, when I see stuff like revenge porn, cyberstalking, harassing, doxing, I'm so glad that I'm beyond a certain age where this was not a factor when I was growing up, and just with much relief. And I don't know how some of my younger cousins deal with this. And it's very scary world.
A lot of issues, with the youth. A lot of parents who are, they come to us and they're in tears because their children are, they found themselves in these issues with smartphones. I mean, you have the ability to put something on the internet with a touch of a button. And that's something, there's no, you can't take it back. And once it's out there, there's no controlling it. We do what we can to, minimize the damage, but, it's very dangerous and the implications that it has. It's hard to grasp even as an adult, but as a minor dealing with these implications. And that's why you see, the rise in suicide and the real trauma that it causes, and now the law is catching up and they're providing remedies so that people can do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's just the darndest thing about it is the not being able to reverse a mistake. It's just online forever. And my heart breaks for all the young people out there when this happens. And everybody's armed with something that brings us so much convenience, so much service, and so much joy, but it also brings us so much hardship. You've got your mobile device on with a camera and a microphone, and you can be a mobile reporter, but you can also be a really creepy person. And so let's talk about some of the clients that you represent. Just kind of, and I think this is really valuable, not just for young people, but for parents. You bring in you bring your kids into a world of mobile devices, a tablet, their first cell phone. But tell us a little bit about kind of your typical client.
So most of my clients, when you have these stalking issues, it's some type of an ex-spouse, and there was some type of emotional attachment. And so it's after that relationship ends, what happens next? And, there may be a brief period of time where you don't hear from them, and then you start dating someone else, and that you're on their radar, and they're targeting you. They're targeting that new person that you're dating. Those issues are the majority of cases that we see. But now we see a lot of youth who, and even adults and professionals who, they have a relationship with someone they meet online and they trust that person, but you have no idea what is on the other side of that screen. And so, they build this relationship. They think that they know this person. They share images, and then they turn around and they don't know what's, there's extortion, whereas pay me this money or else I'm going to share this with your spouse or your boss. And so you have no idea, you build this trust, and they groom them. They know how to groom these victims to manipulate them and get them to trust them. And then you have no idea what's going to be done with those images. So it is a scary world and technology that we live in. So
we do a lot of social media with the network, and one of the things that's never lost on me is dropping the GPS coordinate on your post.
Oh, yes.
And I always found this a little bit off-putting, but we put it in there just because we've got other friends at the event, and we're doing this publicly, so we're not trying to be private, but just that whole idea of like the cyber stalking that you're talking about. Now someone someone knows where you are and you've got a picture, they know what restaurant you're at, they know who you're with. I mean, it's terrifying that kind of information, how easy it is to find.
Exactly. And when you are out at an event, you always want to tag yourself at the event. But, even beyond that, things you don't think about are, the GPS tracking that occurs even on your images. So you upload a photograph onto social media, and someone who knows what they're doing, they can find your location based on that photograph that you put. And so, there's all of these things that can be used as a tool, and it's very frightening, and you have to be aware, because these are things you have to go in and turn off. It's not standard, so there's all of these different ways that people who know what they're doing, and they don't even have to be that savvy, they can track and find people, but a lot of the harassment through social media occurs just, it's not that they're going to that physical location, but that's always something you have to be cognizant of and aware of. But, how much information you really are putting out there. And, a lot of times we say, if you're going on vacation, post when you get back. You're going to an event, post after you leave, and that way there's someone who you may have an issue with, they're not going to show up there knowing that you're there. And so, those are the things that you have to be more cognizant of, in this day and age.
Do you get to get some clients come in and talk a little bit about cyberbullying? I mean, this is an issue I've seen on the news. It's very sad. I mean, poor kids. I mean, kids grow up with enough burdens as it is, but to be, public online for the whole world to see, and someone calls that a fly. Kids can be mean, and they're growing up, but just the harassment, there's so much pile on. So do you get children coming in, or even adults coming in that are being bullied by people online?
Exactly, yes. And even professionals, online reviews, or, people who create fake profiles to target a competitor. There's all kinds of issues, or an ex who creates fake reviews to, harm that person's business, or, there's all kinds of online harassment. And people, will say and do things online hiding behind a screen that they would never do in person. And now, especially with children, they leave school and say there was a bully at school. They, whenever they would leave school, they used to get a break. They would get to go home and relax. Now they're constantly getting alerted. They have it, on them, on their person, in their pocket. And so they're getting alerted constantly when they're being tagged or getting messages from this bully who can keep harassing them even in their own home, in the privacy of their own room. There is no free space anymore. There is no safe space. And you have to make a conscious effort to create that for your family, for yourself, and give yourself that buffer.
How about doxing? I've been reading about a lot of this in the news, doxing, and the episode that comes up the last time, I think probably the most prominent example I have right now is the Covington Catholic School kids out in D.C. for the pro-life march, and there was an altercation with a Native American gentleman out there, and there was, I thought media professionals, I was surprised, but they were, calling out information, kind of asking for some of these kids to be punched in the face. I mean, I was pretty taken back by just the fervor that was going against these children, basically, and they're putting out their personal contact information, their addresses. They had to close the school down because they got bomb threats, and so, it's crazy. And so, are you getting clients that people are releasing their information so that people can track them, know where they are? It becomes a dangerous situation.
Definitely, yes. So people, and that's one way that people are targeted. They're put out there with an image that may have been taken out of context, and this image goes viral on Twitter, on social media, and then their private contact information, their real name is put out there, their address, their work information. These are tools to manipulate. And they know that's where they're going to get them. Because there are people out there who will go that extra step to harass them, even though they weren't directly involved. They come into it, and especially with minors and children, it's. You don't understand, the implications of what you're doing, and you see, one perspective, but you don't really know what's going on. And especially for minors, there is a level of protection which we must provide them with that ability to, have some anonymity. If you file, even in a case, you have to file under Jane Doe or John Doe. You don't put the minor's name in the pleadings, and so there's a reason for that. You have to provide them that protection. It's a lot emotionally, even dealing with that, whatever the underlying issue is alone. But, you compound that with now putting their information out there. If you're you Google your name and, this information comes up, that's going to follow them forever. And so, down the road, it's going to have serious implications. And we really need to give them that privacy, that level of protection.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And so let's transition from the doom and gloom to something a little more happy. So, proactively, dealing with this and just the access to the internet, the access to the world we have through our mobile devices, the loss of privacy and all that's the gloom side of it. But obviously you're working with clients and you have resources and and as a lawyer, you're reaching out trying to help your clients. And so let's give advice to parents. Let's give advice to young people out there that find themselves in this world. What can they do to protect themselves?
So especially whenever you have children and they have smartphones, you need to know what apps are on their phones, how to use them, how to monitor them. You need to be monitoring the content that's on those phones. You could be liable if, your name's on that bill. If they're doing something, even if it's a minor with a minor, you see now it's so easy to take a photograph, or people take photographs and I've had cases where they didn't even know the photographs were being taken of them that are out there now. And so, it's really important to monitor what's on the cloud, where, what messaging, their text messages, being able to monitor that and know what's going on, because they don't understand, the long-term effects of what they're doing. And, it's our job and responsibility as parents to provide them with that guidance and to, make sure that if we see any red flags that you have to be able to restrict it and block it and talk with them and explain, what the implications are. There are tons of cases now with minors who, and even it's one of the leading causes of, suicide in teenagers because of these issues. Whenever a photograph goes viral in a school, that person, they have to go there and face that situation. That has serious impacts and trauma on that victim and on the individuals involved, and even the person who posted it. Their lives could be ruined. They could, go after them for child pornography charges for having that on their device, even though they're a minor who is in possession of it. It doesn't matter. There are serious long-term effects. They could be a registered sex offender, So, these are things you don't think about, when you're in it, but these are consequences that you have to talk through with your children, and make sure that you're doing, what you can to protect them and yourself. People send you a message, and you get this on your device. You didn't have control over them sending it to you, but what do you do with it, And so how do you respond? You need to speak up if you're seeing this happen and say, this is inappropriate. I don't support this. You could get in trouble for doing this or for having this, and speak up and say something about it.
Any recommended services or apps that you prefer?
So as far as services for victims, we're really lucky here in Palm Beach County specifically. The resources that are available for victims through the Legal Aid Society, the Sexual Assault Response Team. I was the head of a collaborative here in Palm Beach County where we worked with law enforcement, providing training with victim advocates, getting everybody together, communicating about, what your roles are, how can we best provide services for victims, and really address the needs on a holistic level. So, there are organizations that are, pushing to provide those services for victims. And, one thing I did when I started my firm is I created a series of short clips of videos, on what hot topics are, so that people can quickly go and see, what do I do whenever I have this issue? If someone's harassing me, what are my options? So that they're empowered to make those, decisions on their own.
Well, Stephanie, I just have one last question for you. You've been so kind to give us a little bit of your time here at the annual convention. But if our listeners, they want to follow up on and learn a little bit more, ask you some questions, maybe they have some kiddos that are getting ready to buy a cell phone for, how can they find you?
So on our website, cagnetmyronlaw.com, and it also even through Twitter at Cagnet Myron Law, any social media, we have our Facebook page, Cagnet Myron Law. We're very responsive, and we provide a free initial consultation because our goal is to empower victims, and really put them in a place to know what resources are available to them, and then they can make the decision of what's best for them at that time. So we offer that free initial consultation and to see if we're able to assist them and what they want to do to help give them the justice that they deserve.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Florida Bar Podcast, but I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And if you like what you heard today, please rate and review us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or best yet, your favorite podcasting app. I'm Laurence Colletti. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Florida Bar Podcast, brought to you by the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center and produced by the broadcast professionals at Legal Talk Network. If you'd like more information about today's show, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com, subscribe via iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and RSS. Find the Florida Bar, Legal Fuel, the Florida Bar's Practice Resource Center, and Legal Talk Network on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Or download the free app from Legal Talk Network in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.